All right, you want to start?
Sure. This is. Are you with me right now? Episode 19.
Episode. No, I think this is. Isn't this 20?
Yep.
Yay!
We made it.
We can stop now.
Yep.
The only thing I'm listening to The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. I think he's Danish. If that's a word. Dutch? Oh, I don't remember. But this book is fantastic. I've been listening to it for the past couple days. I recommended it to my therapist. It's really good. It's all about PTSD and the ways that trauma is stored, like in your mind, in your body, and the ways that your brain changes neurologically in response to traumatic events. And we just got into attachment theory as well, and maternal attachments early in life, which is super fun.
You and your therapist, or in the book?
Oh, sorry, in the book. That's what Bessel just got into.
Okay.
It's crazy interesting. So I've been thinking about that a lot, but the topic that I asked you if I could bring up today / tonight is eating disorders.
And I probably have very limited input here, but I'm interested to hear.
Okay. Yeah, is it okay if I still talk about it a little bit?
I mean, yeah, of course. I don't think I've ever dated anybody with a eating disorder. At least not openly,
LOL, you are now.
Yeah.
I've
An
never...
undefined eating disorder.
I defined it today.
Okay.
I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to go seek a diagnosis on this, but my topic, or the topic today in my psychodiagnostics and psychopathology class for children and adolescents was feeding and eating disorders. And I didn't go in, I laugh with my therapist, I'm not being dramatic as in, oh my God, I have a similar symptom, so I have the whole thing. That's why I mentioned actually the body keeps the score, is that I can relate to so much of it because I have trauma and a resulting personality disorder. It does not mean that I have PTSD, which is what the book generally deals with, but a ton of the depersonalization symptoms, and the dissociation and the flashback sort of things. I don't have active flashbacks, but there's a lot of discussion on stored reactions, like fight or flight survival reactions to trauma and to reminiscent situations, and the ways that you're hyper alert. So I can relate to many of those, which is cool. But I know it means that I don't have I know that it does not mean that I have PTSD, but there is overlap. So it's very helpful to listen to this book. But all that to say, I didn't just oh yeah, I relate to one thing, so I have the whole disorder. But we went through the criteria of the DSM-5 and the DSM-4. We compared anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, pica, rumination disorder, just feeding and eating disorders in general. And we all know what anorexia and bulimia are, but they are defined by their restriction and purging and binging behaviors. Interestingly, anorexia can also have binging and purging within its restriction framework. But for bulimia, it has to be, primarily binging and purging. Am I boring you?
No, sorry. I turned my microphone and I couldn't figure out where the front was.
It's okay. I'm using words that you, or just concepts you're not familiar with. So
yeah, that too.
Sorry. But
more importantly, I was just rearranging my mic and trying to figure out where the front was. I found it.
I'm so proud of you. But in those two big eating disorders, the the predication of each is, at least in part, eating a lot and then overcompensating for your consumption, whether it's exercising excessively, for hours a day, or purging, throwing up to get rid of the calories, quote unquote, you are overcompensating for overeating, essentially. And so there's anorexia and bulimia, restriction versus binge purge. And then there is binge eating disorder. And I have been binge eating for a really long time. So I remember being in, you know, middle and high school. And you and I talked about this kind of a very small amount before I got really defensive, where, the criteria in the DSM-5 at least is in a set period, maybe 2 hours, within 2 hours, you consume like significantly more food than a regular person would consume in that circumstance, and in that time period. And binge eating is like not controllable, and the purging that comes after in bulimia is also not controllable. Like it's a compulsive act. And I always thought that binging in whatever cycle you do it, a criteria is that it brings on intense shame, and you might eat until you are like too full, if you're that you're in physical pain because of it. And a big part of binge eating disorder is that you might plan when and what you're going to binge on. And a lot of times it's like emotional. And I wouldn't say that I've, got really, really severe binge eating disorder, but that's what I was doing after school when I described that to you in very vague detail. Is I would come home, sit down for like an hour and just eat like whatever was there. Normal people don't hide food in their rooms or like plan how to secretly get food when no one's around. Make sure doors are locked and sneak down in the middle of the night. I did those things.
Is that just a product of the way your mom treated you?
It's a product of my composite childhood, yes.
I mean, because it seems like your mom was the reason why you would hide it. I mean, you didn't just hide it because you're a squirrel.
And my dad actively encouraged overeating and like binge eating. So my dad encouraged it and my mom vilified it. So yes, she became the reason I hid it. And I've got a propensity for addiction, based on just my family history. So my dad stoked a food addiction through his own, and then my mom was the one who encouraged me to, or pushed me to hide it because I was so ashamed.
Sure.
But I remember thinking I was so fucked up because I didn't purge it. I couldn't just not eat because I tried. Like there were periods over a few months. I didn't make it very long, but I was trying to eat like baby carrots and drink water for like days at a time. And I couldn't make it happen. And I fucking hate throwing up, that. So that was obviously never an option. But I tried. Like I was so ashamed of how much I would eat and how I couldn't stop, and like how obsessed I was on thinking about food all the time. And this is still how I get, I have to know that's a lot of why I eat too much now is I worry about when my next meal is going to be, what it's going to be. If I skip a meal, I have to eat it. Like it doesn't even matter how close to the next meal it is. And I am fighting that now, especially because where you're like, oh, well, dinner will be here in 2 hours. Let's just wait. And so I can, like, I'm exercising that now, which is really nice. And it makes me feel much more in control. But historically, if I missed a meal, then I'd have to eat to make up for it. Like something would happen, like something bad would happen is what it felt like if I didn't eat those things, if I didn't make up for that, for a missed meal. Or if I didn't know when I was going to eat, then I better just eat now. And like being home alone after school was the only time I felt safe, honestly. Like I hated when my parents came home. It was always immediate, like telling me what to do, bringing home some bad news about something. Like having any member of my family in the house was really distressing to me. When my brother was upstairs, he was getting high. When my mom was home, she was fighting with him. When my dad was home, I was uncomfortable in a million different ways. Being home alone was my favorite thing to be. This is why I live alone. It was like I guess it was making the environment kind of my own. Like I always felt so watched by everyone in my family, but simultaneously not cared about at all. And food made me feel good. So I got to just like say fuck it and eat a lot within the, hour and a half until my mom got home. And I think I only really did that at my mom's house. I don't recall doing that at my dad's, just eating, 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 because it wasn't a taboo at his house. We did eat too much and we ate too often, but it was always like sanctioned by him. Like it was okay and expected of what he did. But I remember like going downstairs in the middle of the night and just eating. Like it was awful.
So I guess what did you learn today then? Just a name for your disorder?
Yes, and I know that, you know, a diagnosis is, and that's, I'm not searching for a diagnosis, but I definitely like know that I've been binge eating for a very long time. Um, and it helps to know that this is a thing and that it's an eating disorder, even without like the excessive exercise or the purging, and that, compulsive eating behavior doesn't make me like a stupid, like weak person, that it was a trauma reaction, and that like it can be treated, I guess, and that it's not just some innate failing of who I am as a person. That's why diagnoses really are important to me. When I first got diagnosed with borderline, my therapist was like, it's not a death sentence. Like, I mean, I fucking hated knowing that I have BPD, but being diagnosed with anxiety and depression and borderline, it just let me relax because, like, I'm there's a way out of all of these things now that I can name them and work on them.
Yeah.
And my family really hates identifying any sort of problem. So really, I just grew up thinking that I was broken and that there was no reason I should have any trouble communicating with people, or, I just wasn't likable. And that's why I couldn't make friends that I felt connected to. My parents didn't treat me wrong. I just was fragile and fucked up. Not naming and recognizing that these are things that other people deal with too in response to certain events is really damaging, because it just makes you think that there is something deeply wrong with you and shameful about you as an individual.
Yeah, and that's where I was when right up until I learned about, attachment systems and
Hmm.
my severely avoidant attachment style, and just how I form relationships with people, which I still don't quite understand, but why I form the relationships I do. I have a little bit, I have a lot more, while I went from having zero insight to having a lot of insight, I still kind of searching for something, I guess. I'm not really sure yet.
I think we both find a lot of solace in knowing ourselves, or moving towards knowing ourselves,
Yeah.
because it is an ongoing process. So, not knowing what you're looking for, it's just going on the journey, and you will find out more as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough feeling broken.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, because I've been through way too many relationships, upwards of a dozen. And I mean, those are just like full-fledged relationships. That's not including everything else.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I get it. The feeling of just trying to learn about what's going on, because, yeah, I guess that's really the way to figure out how to fix it, is to know what it is to fix.
Exactly. It gives you a way out. And while it really fucking sucks to hear whatever it is that you've come down with, basically, it's usually not your fault.
I mean, for me, listening to Attached, it didn't suck learning that
Okay.
everybody else does what I do too. Like Phantom X's and The One and
Hmm.
all that stuff. I was like, oh. I was like, well, I feel dumb. I mean, like, not dumb, but I just definitely felt like there was something cathartic, I guess, in not being alone, but at the same time, yeah, it was something kind of strange in it as well. Just in being described very accurately
Mm.
by a book that I've never heard of before.
We say that a lot in ACA. Every time a newcomer comes in, you have the moment of like, who the fuck wrote down the thoughts going around my brain all the time? Like, who
Hmm.
found my journal? How do you know me?
Pretty funny.
Yeah, it is cathartic. It is also unsettling. And there's always a moment of condemnation, kind of, for me, just because that's just been my experience in my life, of like, Jesus Christ, it's bad enough that there's a name for it and it can be pathologized. Like, that's scary for a minute.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes hand in hand with your family hiding
Mhm.
problems, the covering up thing.
Definitely.
Yeah, your family's got kind of a history of just covering things up. Whereas, I mean, I'd say my family doesn't really have a history of problems, really. I mean, not,
Mm.
I mean, everybody does, but hopefully that
Mhm.
made some sense.
It does. You didn't grow up in a seriously dysfunctional family.
Right, yeah.
So there wasn't a drive to hide everything.
Yeah.
Because literally, I don't know how old one of my grandmothers is. I have no idea how old she is. She had my aunt, the firstborn, when she was like 15. And this was in, I don't know, like the 40s or something.
Okay. So did everybody else, right?
Yeah. But that's when my grandparents got married and because she was pregnant. And she and the family has such intense shame over that
What?
that oh yeah, we don't speak about how old she is. I have no fucking idea how old my grandparents are.
That's kind of dumb because
It's so dumb.
that was normal for the 40s. I mean, maybe not normal, but
Oh, but we're all about appearances and it's such bullshit.
yeah.
It's just a serious, deep self loathing. And my aunt, who they had super young out of wedlock, well, I mean, conceived out of wedlock, she's had bulimia like her whole fucking life, encouraged by my grandmother. And when I told my mom that I have VPD, I mentioned it because my psych eval was covered under our insurance and I had an insurance question about it, but I figured it out, whatever. But she called back and I was like, oh, okay, I'll explain it to you. And I told her that I'd been diagnosed with something. And she was like, don't ever tell anyone that, don't, you shouldn't ever talk about that. Like, even to yourself, it's going to follow you forever. Like, having that label can ruin your life. Like, it's going to stop you from getting a job. It's going to make people think you're crazy. I'm like, Jesus, fuck. Knowing yourself is a strength.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I should go like talk about it to everyone I meet because oversharing is something I need to stop doing. But there's so much fear and hatred around understanding yourself and accepting your weaknesses. And that's my mom.
Well, and that's not, that's certainly not exclusive to your family, like admitting some sort of weakness. Because,
No.
I mean, a lot of people do feel like admitting weakness is weak. I mean, that seems to be a societal norm. I mean, which is
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, if society wants to do that and be fucking broken over it, I mean, whatever.
Yeah. It just has been extreme in my family. And there also seems to be like some paranoia about like people are going to use this against you. Which, I mean, protect yourself. That's not what I'm saying. But, defining yourself even just to you is not some horrible practice that's going to like scar you for life.
Yeah.
Well, that just about wraps up my eating disorder discussion. And I feel better having spoken about this to you because you were saying, when we last talked about this very briefly, that accepting or like, I don't know, saying it to another person means accepting that it's happened.
Yeah. I was trying to just get you to like quantify what your disorder actually was. Like, what, just to have another perspective on it, I guess, but to let me kind of give me some insight into what you're actually talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But also, very much, yeah, I mean, being able to speak about it, I think, requires you to really break through the shame of it, I guess. And that's probably obvious.
Okay, I get that though. And I think that is where hearing this diagnosis came in because I just told you a whole lot of shit I've never told anyone or not really spoken about, I guess, at all, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't actively think about sneaking out of my room at, 1 a.m. to binge on food in my mom's house, like for in total silence and like waiting for someone to wake up and hear me. I don't think about that. God, that sucked.
I think if I ever really snuck out of my room for anything, I never really had to. I mean, my parents were fairly open.
That's really nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'd say, I mean, surely compared to other people, they were pretty open minded, I guess. I mean,
Hmm.
my mom way more so than my dad.
Hmm.
kind of, my dad seems to kind of subscribe to or, used to for sure subscribe to the whole lie about whatever you did. I felt like mostly it was some sort of just personal shame to admit that to your kids that, hey, I've done things before,
Eh,
which seems, I don't know, it seems crazy. Like, I don't really plan on hiding much from my kid. I mean, she's just going to hear about it from someone else. I mean, she'll be in my shoes then, like, oh shit, my dad's lied to me. Even like about dumb things, even, not even anything serious.
and thus the cycle repeats.
Yeah, I mean, there's just something, uh,
Like deception closer to it, I
yeah,
guess.
there's something deceiving about it, I guess. I mean, because I don't understand why you would just up and lie about it. I kind of do, but only kind of.
Shame makes people do weird shit, man.
Yeah.
I imagine that's why your dad lied.
Yeah, probably. I'm sure it was shame based, and that's fine.
I wonder what his childhood was like.
His dad was actually. So both of his parents were military. My grandma, I think, was a military nurse.
Oh,
My grandpa was Air Force.
okay.
I'm pretty sure that's how that went down.
I don't know. I'm just wondering how his parents treated him, and not as in like, oh, your dad totally got abused, but like I wonder how they spoke to him, how they presented themselves to him, how they talked to each other, how honest they were about themselves, or the ways they disciplined him. I would be interested to know. And what do you know what war his father served in?
I don't think he served in a war.
Okay, that matters too. Military members tend to bring like their own sort of dynamic into a family. I mean, if they've been in a war, they've witnessed trauma, and they're deployed, so they're absent from the family for a while, and when they come back, they're very different usually. PTSD manifests in a lot of different ways, and it might not be super drastic, but people, that's a big life event that alters you a little bit. So, if his father did not fight in a war, then I guess that's irrelevant. But that's why I was asking. But your dad's behavior comes from his family of origin too. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he didn't just come up with that behavior on his own.
yeah, I know how much it bothers you that he misrepresented like what he did and what was good and what was bad or whatever, and that he kind of beat you down with that.
It would be like teaching my kid that 1 + 2 is 4. And then her, one day picking up 3 M&Ms and being like, wait a minute, the fuck is going on here? It just seems intentional.
Huh. Do you think your dad thought you would find out?
I mean, I guess not. Either he wasn't concerned with that, or he thought that I wouldn't.
It seems intentional. That was important.
Yeah.
It sounds that you feel like he really did a disservice to you on purpose by not representing himself accurately. Like, does that make sense?
There was a very long time there where I was very anti-drug. And a lot of it had to do with him for sure. My drugs are bad, okay. Mixed with, the experience I had with my friends in high school. Like, a lot of my friends in high school would skip school to go get high and stuff. Like, a lot. And a lot of the behavior they did when they would do that, was like I didn't care for. Like, some of it was fairly delinquent. So yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of like anecdotal observation as well as, learned
What was?
my aversion to drug usage. And then, come to find out that it's really, not that big of a deal. It's, hey, whatever.
Two responses. First, a lot of your lack of problems with drugs, I think, really comes from the fact that you started using them after adolescence. That is huge.
Yeah.
So it's really good that you did because it lowers, you have like a 4% chance of developing an addiction after age 25. if your first use is after that. So you did yourself an enormous favor by waiting until what, 27?
Mm,
Something like that?
let's see. I was 24 when I started using LSD. And yeah, I was 26 or
Okay.
27 when I started smoking marijuana.
So you were like basically done developing before you started using any substances,
Yeah.
which is huge. That's enormous. It's huge, as our Orange Man Dad would say,
hmm
because your cortexes were already done. Like you were cooked, and it affects adolescents super differently than it does adults. So I think that is most, if not, it's a lot of your lack of addiction issues, which is really wonderful and something that you've really got going for you, that you can use these things responsibly and in ways that don't, fuck up your life. Um, Second response was, what would you have respected more for your dad to do? What do you wish he'd done instead of lying?
I saw my ex-wife's dad do this, and I thought it was
Hmm.
very, he was very open with all the things that he did. I just thought that was kind of commendable. His reasoning behind that was, he may not be the best person ever, but at least he can set like a bad example. And he was kind of making a joke, but the point of that is that it's almost like this comfort level in having this sort of insight, I guess. Instead of just being like, well, hey, my dad says this is terrible, but all my friends are doing it, so I'm going to try it. If my dad says that he's done it before and here are the experiences that he had, and that sounds like a nightmare, you'd probably be a little less inclined to do it if you were actually given real information about it as opposed to just being taught abstinence. Because abstinence is not effective.
And that sounds very, very you. That is everything I know, or many things I know about you, is that, a baseless like command means just about nothing. Whereas a real human like experience and knowing or hearing real life, like what actually happened, and like having open mindedness to trying something and seeing what goes on and sharing that experience is very, like, that has impact for you. That holds weight in your decision making, is actual evidence.
Yeah, I'm
Which,
very much a subscriber to questioning authority.
yes, I do know that. And it sounds like hearing your dad's actual life experiences with these things would have made him a little more human to you too.
Yeah,
Do you feel that your dad's, like, the way he misrepresented his drug use, distanced you from each other,
probably.
like emotionally?
Probably.
Hmm. Sounds tough.
Yeah, not really.
I know, like, you're not, oh, some sad, traumatized kid, but
Right. I have PTSD because my dad lied to me about marijuana.
I'm not trying to pigeonhole you,
Yeah,
but
I know.
the ways that I hear you talk about your dad during your childhood is that he was never really there. So, I mean, this makes a lot of sense as to why you've never felt particularly close to him. Is that you didn't get real life experiences from him. You just got dogmatic, do this, don't do that.
Right. Yeah, and I was talking to my buddy last night, and I've kind of struggled with this as well recently. That my dad's he was probably there a lot more than I give him credit for.
Mhm.
Like in reality, physically there, because there are lots of things. Like I remember him, he took me to see the Power Rangers live action when it came through
Oh,
town.
ho, ho, ho.
But yeah, so I kind of, just remembering little events like that. That is coupled, now with what we're talking about. I didn't realize that parents were like real people. Until fairly
Mhm.
late in life. It's the same phenomenon that like, your teachers are people too. It's kind of a
Yeah.
hard concept to grasp for little people, I feel like.
Yes.
Because these people are parents, there's something that separates authority figures from me.
Hmm.
And, I don't think I want to pass that along to my kid. I don't think there's any value in that. I think it's far more important to give my child some sense of her own authority,
Hmm.
some sense of confidence. That seems valuable to me.
Sounds like You don't feel that you got that from your parents. Theory of mind is the concept that comes, I think, in like your one of your motor developmental phases. I don't remember. It's like middle childhood. I want to say somewhere between 5 and 8. It's the ability to understand your own emotions, needs, feel like desires as your state of mind, and to differentiate other people's needs, wants, desires from yours. So understanding that, like, I think it's cold outside, or I love the color purple, little kid stuff, versus, but my friend Jenny thinks it's pretty warm out here. She doesn't want to wear a jacket, but I need a jacket. Or her face, she doesn't like purple at all. Purple's her least favorite color. It's understanding that your needs and thoughts differ from other people's, and that your ideas are not the only ones in the world.
Yeah.
And that's obviously really basic, but understanding that you and someone else react to different stimuli in different ways, or the same stimuli in different ways. But yeah, that's why that is something, like, it's really hard for kids, and I guess emerging adolescents, to understand that parents and adults make mistakes too, and that they're like full people. And I don't think I realized that really until my friends have started becoming teachers and becoming parents. I'm like, oh shit, it's just us.
And it is a gradual slide into that. I guess like most things, it's something you kind of just grow into over time, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm old, But it didn't really happen. I mean, it surely didn't happen overnight. You just realized it. There was just some pivotal event that makes you realize that one day. But it'd be nice to try and alleviate some of that by making her feel independent. And not completely independent. I mean, she's, you see the way that I treat her.
Yes, very much. I make examples about y'all in my notes in class. I don't like share about you necessarily, but I'll make connections in my notes to the girl that I used to sit, or to how you interact with your kid, and that, like, family system. It's very interesting. And the reason I brought up theory of mind is that by sharing your inner feelings and, like, the structures that you govern yourself with, you're teaching her to do the same. And, saying things about you that she doesn't feel, whatever it may be, is going to help her make her own identity and understand that, oh, my daddy said that, but I don't think that way, or I don't agree. She's going to be able to debate with you, like, not in a bad way,
Right.
but critically think about what she does think and what she does want, which is very important. And yeah, I mean, that's what you want to do. And I love that we talked about manners and, like, a sense of authority in our last episode, question mark. I just feel that those tie together well.
It's probably going to come back and really bite me in the ass when she's a teenager.
Pretty much, definitely, but
doesn't everything.
Yes. Having kids comes back to bite you in the ass when they're teenagers.
Yeah.
I guess it comes down to, though, like, all kids fucking suck during adolescence. I didn't, because I was scared, but and now I'm being like the stupid shit my parents don't like now, because I'm having, like, the rebellion, at age 23.
I need to be like your parents and then just abandon my kid by the time she's in college.
No, stop. Stop. But would you rather have a kid that'll fight you because they have a healthy sense of self-esteem and independence?
Right.
Or a kid that'll be docile and fucking terrified throughout her adolescent years because you beat her down? I think a rebellious teenager is kind of the, within reason, is kind of the price to pay for teaching autonomy.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth it. And of course, there crosses the line where it's dangerous rebellion, or, like, my brother, basically, where they're, like, violent or using drugs, dangerously and stuff like that. But the healthy line, like, they should be moving away from you. They should be establishing their own identity and, like, thinking about their future.
Why did your brother act the way that he did?
I've been wondering about that. I mean, he and I were in the same environment. Like, I think he blames himself a lot for developing an addiction, and that's why my guess is that he doesn't look so harshly on our childhood. Because he probably thinks there was something wrong with him that made him, his addiction caused all the problems. It wasn't bad before he started doing that, is my guess that he thinks. But I don't actually know, so I'm just theorizing.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that because in my, I think that same, or no, like family theory class, we're talking about subsystems. The parental, or no, sorry, the marital or couple subsystem in a family, the parent-child subsystem, and the sibling subsystem. And my brother and I always hated each other. We never, ever got along at all. My parents separated when I was 6. My brother and I hated each other before then. We fought constantly. And in class, my teacher spoke about, when boundaries are really diffuse and subsystems start getting enmeshed, they all kind of start melding together, or there's interference between them. That's when subsystems get problems. And she gave the specific example of a mother interfering in the sibling subsystem. If they fight, then the parent will intervene and referee and say, this kid was right, this kid was wrong. And it makes that sibling subsystem a competition where those kids are going to grow up absolutely despising each other. You don't learn how to coexist. You don't learn to become a coalition. You're in conflict all the time. And
Yeah.
that is exactly how my brother and I were, because my parents fought 24/7 from the time I was born. And they didn't have time or patience for us like nagging at each other and bickering. So they would just tell us to shut up and who was right and who was wrong and to stop being mean. So we were taught no mediation skills
Hmm.
or just how to get the fuck along with each other. And so there was a lot of intervention, and we never formed a strong sibling subsystem. I've never felt very close to my brother at all, and I desperately wanted to be because I was the younger sibling. But a home that's falling apart, i.e., full of fighting and violence. My dad tried to kill my mom a couple times in front of us when he was drunk. I didn't even know these things because I just didn't remember them. But post their separation, like after the age of 6 for me, when I can definitely remember those things, I don't remember these. But my dad tried to throw my mom off a second-story deck. He strangled her in front of us. She put him in jail for domestic violence. I put him in jail for domestic violence years later. And I mean, I think he took the fall for my brother on that one, but there was a lot of violence in our home. And watching your mother get strangled is really not conducive to a healthy mental state. And being around a father who is consistently drunk and angry. I was never hit. There were no hands laid on me as far as I know. But my dad was very scary when he drank. And he was very scary afterwards. And I think my brother took that in too. And I remember constantly shaking, just being frightened. My home was very stressful when I was younger. And I never knew what emotions were going to come out of anyone at any given time, but I knew they would be big and explosive. So I lived on edge. I imagine that he did too. And I was always really social. My mom laughs oh yeah, you were always super happy to go to preschool and make friends and bye mom, see you later. But my brother was always super terrified. He would cling, he would cry. He was like the problem kid that was terrified to leave our parents' sight. He was more asocial or more anxious, I guess. So I mean, and he'd been living in the situation longer than I had, I guess, but he had some sort of attachment difficulty, apparently. um, and he just, boys tend to externalize. They have anger issues. They more often use substances. Girls tend to internalize. They more often get depressed. They more often hurt themselves. And I never cut myself, but I had a lot of desire to, but I just didn't, kind of the same thing of I really don't, want to purge. I really don't want to be anorexic, but I want the result. I want to feel better. I know people that are doing this and they feel better, but I know it's horrible. So I'm not going to, or I can't do it. So, I mean, I was always the kind of quieter, the struggling between how the fuck do I want to deal with this? And I want to hurt myself, but I don't know how, and I can't make myself do it, which is good. I'm very glad that I did not slit my wrists.
Yeah.
But I never knew how to get rid of those feelings. And my brother found substances. He fell in with the crowd that used him and off he went. They made him feel better. And I found food and depression. There was like a whole school year where I did not smile, I did not laugh, I did not talk to my friends. I would just walk through the day with no facial expression and not talk. That was the year my brother started using.
I used to talk to a girl who would cut herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it was really strange. I never understood it at all.
Mm-hmm.
She would always like cut her stomach and stuff so you couldn't see it.
Yep.
It just seems so dumb. Like, to be mean about it. But I mean, really, it did. I mean, that's kind of how I feel. It feels.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, a lot of people do it, so apparently I'm the dumb one.
You're not dumb, and it's really good that you don't understand why people self-mutilate.
Yeah.
That's really good. When I was in the hospital on suicide watch that one night, LOL, thank God I was voluntary. The person, like the attendant, I was social, I was chatty, I was making friends with the attendants. And she's like, well, what are you in here for? I'm like, oh, I was going to kill myself. And she goes, what? I don't understand why people do that. Like, why would you want to hurt yourself? That's so dumb. Like, okay, fuck you. It's good that you don't understand the pain that would lead someone to want to hurt themselves physically. Like, I don't want to underestimate or underemphasize that. I had a lot of friends and still do who have a history or a current presence of self-harm. And I just got to a section in the book that is speaking about that too. And people who have disorganized home lives throughout their childhood, first of all, we don't regulate our emotions well. We don't have the capacity to without a lot of work. And we generally have a lot of depressive and anxiety disorders, which are very overwhelming. And especially if you have like a psychotic disorder. But all of my panic attacks, every single one, are sensory related. And my sensory like triggers or certain sensory situations will set off a chain of memories and like physical responses. If I'm in a dark room, if I haven't had enough food to eat, or if I'm sleepy, whatever, but if I'm in somewhere dark with really overwhelming sound, I'm probably going to have a panic attack if I'm otherwise not doing great mentally. Because it reminds me of my father shouting at me and like physically cowering over me and threatening me. And those sorts of things where you're very caught in like overwhelming mental and situational stimulus, if it's linked to trauma, I mean, it sucks to deal with. Like, I'd be sitting in a corner. I used to have to go into rooms with the lights just turned off and just breathe and just wait for it to end. I had to do that a couple of years ago in college. Whenever it happens, like, you just can't deal. You are so overwhelmed. And that's what anxiety is just in general. It's racing thoughts. It's not being able to pinpoint what's going on, what you're feeling, what you want, how to make it stop. Things are just swirling. And for people who've been traumatized, if you have an inclination to hurt yourself, which again, I've had but not really acted on, it's kind of the same as using drugs or eating spicy food. Causing yourself pain creates a dopamine rush. And it also gives you something to focus on, a different kind of pain to focus on. Because this one is finite. You can look at it. You can control it. You can control the severity of it too. And you can't do any of that with your internal pain. You can't make it go away in that moment without the tools, whatever. If you don't understand or if you don't know that you're dealing with trauma, you can't do shit about it. And it just feels like you're going to fucking die. Like it's being swirling like in trauma is terrifying and very debilitating. So for people that do cut or use drugs or whatever, it's a way to distract yourself and create something like less destructive to them than what's going on in their head. And there's like a way in and a way out. So it's not like healthier, like, yeah, it's great to cut yourself, it makes everything better. But that's why.
Okay.
Yeah, often people who cut themselves are not doing it because they want to die. It's because that is how they have figured out to cope. And there's so much self-loathing involved in trauma that, like, who fucking cares if I'm in pain? It's like a way to get out your aggression too. Because you can't take it out on anyone else without being like hurt in more ways than one. So you take it onto yourself. If it's got nowhere to go, it goes back into you.
So we're going kind of long on this podcast, but because we both want to go to bed.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask, like, how do you think we're doing?
With what?
I mean, everything, just in general. In general, I guess. And I think, have a slightly more specific question. But in general, how do you think we're doing?
My first inclination is to ask if I've done something wrong.
No. No, just a general assessment.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess no, just a general report card. I mean, how am I doing?
Okay.
Yeah, you're not doing anything wrong.
Okay.
I hope.
I don't think I am.
I know.
I feel very safe with you right now, like in general in the past few weeks. We've been doing a lot of like family related talking, like about kids and the future and stuff. And none of it's making me nervous. I feel secure in thinking about these things with you. And you've been smushy lately, more so when you're using drugs, which I find kind of funny. But you've been really vocal in the past couple days about like how happy it makes you that we do family stuff with your munchkin and how impressed you are with me and what I do with school. Um, and I'm feeling sorry, this is literally all about me, I guess. I guess that's all I know how to conceptualize is how I feel about things. But I have not been, I don't know, in the last like 2 days, I have not felt threatened by you wanting to have alone time. Um, I was mad about our schedules, last episode?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm noticing that, like, okay, I've not been like a stupid bitch about it for the past couple days. I've been trying to assure you that it's good and important that you take alone time to recharge and do stuff that you like. I don't know. I feel like we're pretty smooth sailing right now. It's nice.
Okay. That's good. And I feel the same way.
Okay.
Like sexually, a lot of our early conversations was very much about like kink and stuff like that. And I feel like we've really fallen off of the whole kink thing.
Okay.
I'm fine with not fine. I mean, I'm happy with the sex we have. I think it's really good. Well, I have a couple of specific questions, I guess, but yeah, I'm just wondering if you're satisfied because you went from joining, going to kink groups and doing that and whatever to, I don't know, to me, I guess.
The question is, am I sexually fulfilled? Yes.
Yeah, that's the overarching question there. Yeah.
Okay. Our sex is so, so good. Do I need to say that more? Because Jesus fuck, we have amazing sex.
I
Um,
agree. And
okay.
no, you do say that enough.
Okay.
We do have good sex.
Yeah, we do. Damn. Um, we've spoken about this before, but it's been a number of months. You've been more vocal, and I like hearing what we talk about. Um, I'm starting to figure out what I can say to you, or just solidifying what I say to you that turns you on. Like while we're actually having sex. And what you said last time we had sex was incredible. Oh, it was so good. I thought that was some of the kinkiest sex we'd had, actually, even though it didn't include, blindfolds, restraints, any of that. Um, but like the power positions and stuff that we used. Yeah, and like you bit me like I like. We had my collar on. I came really hard and more than once. Yeah, and you spoke about like using me. You hit so many of the points that I like, and you often do. And one of the big points that I like is emotional intimacy. So really that makes up for a lot of the things that we don't do, and I don't miss them.
I do really enjoy the emotional intimacy in the middle of
Mhm.
like fairly wild sex. I mean,
Mhm.
so yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, physically, I do agree. We're like a 10 out of 10 on having sex.
Yep.
But a lot of our relationship lately is like long distance.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, I sent you a picture this morning, but overall,
Oh.
we're not doing a lot, like of phone sex, I guess, sexting and stuff like that.
Oh, damn, you're right.
I'm not missing it, but I want to make sure that you're not. Sometimes it seems strange to try and approach that with you. Like,
Hmm.
because a lot of that, I guess, I associate, and okay, I guess this kind of helps me dig a little further here. A lot of that I associate with having a relationship on the side,
Oh.
because I've probably done more of the phone sex thing with like a side relationship than I have like my primary relationship. My primary relationship was always, very physical. Whereas side relationships were almost, for the most part, exclusively just, I don't know, how would you say that? Conceptual, maybe, just sexting and stuff like that.
I'm trying to slow my heart down. Hang on.
I'm just referring to past
I know.
experiences.
I
Okay.
know it. Just like the thought of that is severely uncomfortable for me, like physically uncomfortable,
Sure.
you know. So I'll be fine. Like give me a second, I'll be all right. But huh, that's just not a favorite thought of mine because I don't think about that. Like I don't think about you cheating on me, and I have no reason to. It's not something that I like live in fear of or anything. So when I do think about it, it's like, oh fuck,
Yeah.
I don't like that at all.
I mean, that's almost got to be my like own personal blockade there, in that has just been a historical like side relationship thing, and like bridging that gap. And I've heard Peterson talk about this before, talking about how you end up making your partner like your mother, and it's very hard to find
Huh.
like true intimacy with your partner. And that's about all I was listening to a much larger piece by him, and he just kind of skimmed over that really quickly. So I need to dive more into that. And that's definitely something I'm going to do with my therapist soon.
Please, that's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's sort of a Freudian sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm certainly not consciously turning you into my mom, but I think the idea still holds water, that like you're more of like a nurturing figure because you are my primary and only, relationship. How do you blend that nurture with something that's, fairly deviant, which for some reason I have no problem with that physically. Well, I think that's obvious because I've, whatever. It's obvious to me. I'll spell it out for you if you need me to. But I think what I'm really saying is that personally, I think I'd like to try and find a way to blend the two so that I can be a little more dominant just when we're apart.
Mm-hmm. You can do that when we're together too.
Yeah. But and I think that'll help that as well. I mean, I think that would bridge just several feelings there.
I agree.
Sorry that I think I dumped a lot more on you than I originally planned there, but it kind of just came out that way.
Oh, that's perfectly fine. Thank you for telling me all of that. I thoroughly appreciate when you open up like more than even, when it's more than you intended.
Mm-hmm.
It's never a burden to me. And thank you for saying that. When you just said dominant, my entire body had a reaction. So yeah, I guess I think we should do a little more of that. With you being like overtly in charge is just my favorite thing.
Right.
And it's so good between us because, you're not very overtly dominant unless we're having sex. It's much more nurturing, which is not bad. I'm not knocking that in the slightest. But I don't realize, I think, how often or how little we do like the overt dominance. But I also know that is something you've done in like really disconnected past relationships when it was just sexual.
Yeah.
And I think the catch here is that this is not just a sexual relationship. This is a friendship and a partnership and a future parentship. And that we've got a lot going besides the sex. And it's been hard for you in the past to degrade me, which I have issues with like being degraded while I get fucked. Or be really vocal about like using me, which you did last time, which was really fun. And so I think I can see where what Peterson was talking about comes into the picture is that, I'm the Madonna, not the whore.
Mm-hmm.
And the whore is usually reserved for whoever you're with on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Because you and we do not masturbate now. Like since we've met, we haven't gotten off without each other. We haven't watched porn. None of that. Everything we do exists in person, one-on-one, on that super intense level. And I send you nudes and stuff, but it's not like I've gotten off without you ever. And I do agree. I think it's really important that we can do both of those things because I mean, to be very blunt, I want to be your whore too. And we've delved into that a little bit. Like while we're having sex, you've opened up more to calling me your slut or saying that I'm like, your favorite toy or whatever. Because usually with prompting by me. But if we integrate those, I think it'll help us both, with the emphasis on you in this specific conversation, feeling really fulfilled in all the weird shit we like to do. And that it's very secure and very emotionally intimate. And with that, safe base of protection. Because I do really, really like kink. And I like some of the weirder shit within, daddy dom little girl. And I think you like that stuff too, but you might be a little scared to do it with me because I'm sweet and little and whatever.
Yeah. Well, and you're like you're my primary relationship. It is strange to devalue you.
It doesn't sound like there was a whole lot of like deviance or exploration within your primary relationships in the past. Was it like frowned upon with who you were with? Or to be clear, were you're the person you were in a relationship with, did they reject those sorts of things or not want to do those things?
No. I mean, especially not like my overarching not my ex-wife, not my main relationship throughout life. No.
I'm wondering why you sought that inside relationships then. I mean, avoidance, yes, I understand, but I guess I wonder like where the conviction that those weren't safe in your primary relationship came from.
I mean, just listening to Peterson, I guess, and I mean other philosophers too. That seems normal.
What? Making your parent your mother, or not wanting to like do kinky shit with your partner?
I mean both.
Or both.
I think that's related. I think they're related.
True. I just have parental issues, so I'm like, it's fine. These go together just fine.
Right. And I don't, and so that's probably, that may be the core of a lot of that is because I don't have, parental issues with my mom, especially.
And this is a topic now, well, continuing for, I guess, another podcast. I am so interested in your mom and how y'all interacted and like just how y'all were together. And not even in like, let's dissect your life, but I'm genuinely curious about how she was and how you felt about her and the ways that y'all talked and what she taught you. I really want to know those things.
Yeah.
Because I've heard about your dad. And I know that's really painful for you to talk about your mom. So I'm not going to push you to it. We don't have to talk about this. I just wanted you to know. Like, I'm very curious about her because you love her.
Yeah.
And I want to know because she affected you and she shaped you. And I love the fuck out of you and the person that you are. So I'm just interested.
Yeah. That did come up with my therapist the other day. We'll try and revisit this in the next podcast or, in a future podcast. But this did very recently come up and she kind of mentioned to me that, she mentioned that kids who kind of entertain themselves tend to remember a lot less about their childhood than other kids who spend more time like doing family activities. And I guess people who do family activities have a lot more to say about their childhood. Which, I can tell you all about, all the great video games that I played, all the great adventures I went on. And I didn't spend a lot of my childhood alone. I spent a lot of it with friends. I grew up with one of my first cousins. And then I went to school and I always had friends at school. I was kind of outcast, not literally, but I was kind of just a nerd kid. But all that being said, it is still difficult for me to bring up memories specific to my mom. And maybe that's like subconsciously painful or something like that, but it just seems difficult there to really talk about it. Not painful, just difficult.
Like it's hard to access the memories?
I guess so, yeah.
To like pull them up?
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds more like a logistical difficulty than an emotional difficulty, which is interesting and Not all that surprising for you.
Yeah, true.
Not to be like, "Haha, you're so easy to read," but that's interesting because I would expect it to be exactly the opposite because that is how I operate.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely difficult having, I was 26 when she passed away. That's really young to lose a parent. I mean,
Yes.
my brother was 20, so he was way younger
Mm.
and far more affected by it. But yeah, I mean, I think it really, because she was young. She was 53 or 54, yeah.
I'm trying to think. My parents are what, like 57 or something? They just turned 57.
Yeah.
That'd be like if I didn't have them for the last 4 years.
But yeah, that's definitely, we'll definitely get into that next time.
Okay.
Because that's about all.
Peace out.
Peace out.